Bowels Over Bass. I'm Ronnie Adams.
And I'm Jacob Casas, and we're here to share the sheet.
So tell us, what is a howler to you, Jacob?
So a howler is always someone who is always striving to be the best versions of themselves. There's always room for self-improvement. Mm-hmm. So if a howler is believing that they're the best at everything, they're not a real howler. I mean, you always can improve in everything you do, from physically, spiritually, from your intellect to bettering anything in your life. I don't care what you're doing. Instead of being complacent in your life, you should always be willing to improve your life.
Now, you said something about being the best version of yourself. Can you explain that as a howler, like being the best version of yourself?
So, being the best version of yourself, there's so many things to go over on that. So, when it comes down to being the best version of yourself, you got to think, okay, where does everything start from, like in your life? If anything, you know that, I mean, a real howler, to me in my mind, a real howler is someone that believes in God. So you need to be God-fearing, number one. That's where it's going to start. And you need to invest your time into that. Invest it. So that's, how do you invest your time into that? You invest that into reading, praying, battling for your business, your career, your children, but within that mindset of battling within the word. You know, so there's a lot of different ways to battle. So
and you said always improve. A person should be always improving their relationship with God.
Yeah.
You know?
So the only way to improve is to what? To study.
Okay.
Because if you're not studying, if you're not reading, if you're not praying, if you're not constantly trying to figure out who God is in your life and what purpose He has in your life, then how are you going to grow? You know what I mean? So if you're always going to stay stagnant or the same. So if you just live this life aimlessly and you're just like, okay, I go to work, I come home, I do the same thing every day, you're not growing. You have to learn to grow.
Because God, you said something critical. God is a part of the purpose.
He's number one, actually. I mean, if you really think about it, man, in particular, always want to find their purpose. And the only way they can find their purpose is being in tune with God. I believe that, like 100%. That's why so much men, I feel like, are just angry, are upset, are depressed, are going through these weird battles in their lives. You know what I mean?
Definitely. So when you say always improving, that's one thing that you told us that people could improve in is their relationship with God. Can you tell us something else that they can improve in, always improving?
So knowledge is a really important thing, but I look at knowledge differently. I feel like there's knowledge and there's intellect. So people can read and study, and they're like, oh, they can basically recite what they read, what they studied. But if you try to improve your intellect and what you just learned, and improve from what they did, or find your own lane in that, or your own avenue in that, I feel like that's a huge difference. Because if you're just sitting there and you're like, oh, I learned this, and you don't exceed in it in a different way, like, okay, so I learned about how to start a business, I learned how to run a diesel repair shop, but if you don't gain intellect,
learning how to communicate it.
Well, yeah. So you gain, there's knowledge and then there's intellect, right? So if you gain the knowledge of how to start a business and how to run a shop, it's different than the intellect part of improving how to make that shop better. Because if you just have the knowledge of it, then you do the exact same thing everybody else is doing. But if you gain intellect on it, then you're improving. You're like, okay, this is what I've learned. This is how I can make it better. This is how I can improve in like 3 to 5 years from now, and I can make it better than it is.
Definitely.
You should always be learning that with intellect. And if they say, and this is where it comes down to too. So if they say if knowledge is power, And the word says knowledge comes from fear. Comes from fear of the Lord. So I feel like if it starts from there, knowledge comes from fear of the Lord.
It's the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah.
Yes, that's good teaching.
So then you go from knowledge from the Lord. So then how do you get to intellect? You go from you got to start from the beginning. Knowledge is the beginning of fear of the Lord. So now you have knowledge. Now you got to gain intellect. Not only are you learning about God, you're learning how to basically put God into your life and how to make God a part of your life and to make it roll with you, with how you're doing in life. Not just saying, hey, this is what I'm learning, this is what I'm reading, but you're not learning to gain information from that. You're just hearing that.
Right.
I mean, that's a big difference, and I learned that from running my own business. I mean, I ran diesel repair shops before, and then when you run a diesel repair shop, and then owning it, you got to gain your own intellect because you can't just run it like you were taught.
Okay.
It's completely different.
So, can you tell us about more of the spiritual journey and the improvement with that? Like, how do you feel that, your spiritual journey and has improved in your outlook and you being a howler?
A lot, actually. I feel like my business wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for that. I feel like I have favor in that. So I feel like God gives me favor, even though I do a lot of wrong things. I feel I have favor in that, but it's because my whole thought process is still within Him. I know that everything comes from Him. I know,
That's good.
Yeah. So even if it's not how I'm reacting to it, it is still in my mind. That's where it's coming from.
But you said you do a lot of wrong things. Can you explain that? Like, what do you mean by that? Like,
I don't live my life by the book, which I should. We should all strive to do that.
But you think that anybody's perfect in living their life by the book?
No, and they're not going to be. But you can always strive to be.
That's good.
And I feel like you should strive to be. What is the first thing comes to your mind about being a howler?
A lot comes to my mind when we talk about being a howler. The importance of knowing who you are while you're trying to be a howler. A lot of people can bark up a good tree, but are you who you say you are? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Are you handling your business and taking care of all your responsibilities as a man or as a woman?
What kind of responsibilities are you talking about?
Well, first of all, I mean, if you are, if you have kids, that's important for man and woman to understand or realize if they're a howler, if they're a man or a woman, with kids. A howler, is always a person who's going to teach their kids how to be and what to do, the right thing. That's what a howler is going to do. A howler that has children, they're going to teach their kids what to do and what to be, or what to be and what to do. So what's another characteristic, Jacob, or another attribute that you want to share with the people about howlers?
Well, I feel like a howler, it needs to be a fighter. Be like 2-3 steps ahead of anything that's going on. So, I mean, when I talk about fighting, you should be physically ready to fight. That's always something that you should be ready to do. If you got to protect your family, protect yourself, wherever you're at, because there's knuckleheads everywhere. And the way this world is, you should always be able to I'm not going to just say defend, because I don't believe that you should just be defending yourself. I believe that you should take the first punch sometimes, because why are you going to allow someone to take the first punch? But beyond fighting, there's so much more about when it comes to fighting, because I've learned so much about fighting for my business. I should have been over probably the first year in business. I've been in business 8 years now. Yeah. So when it comes to fighting, you can fight for your business in a lot of ways. Making sure that the people that work for you are surviving, paying them. They don't need to know about all the struggles that you're going through. You just got to make sure that the business is still standing and that you're fighting. You can fight quietly like that when it goes back to fighting spiritually. So when I was fighting for my business, I would go back and fight spiritually, even if you have to fight within fasting, like self-sacrificing food, things like that for yourself. And I can testify on that works, because I have done that before. So when it comes down to fighting, there's so many ways you can do it. But I know a lot of people want to say defending. I just feel like that's not a way to fight. You should always be ready, to the point where even if it's your best friend, you got to be ready if something was to happen, if they were to basically betray you completely. You should be ready, like 3 different ways ready. Not just like, oh, I'm ready in this way, and then they still get you. Right? You should be ready like, okay, if they get me this way, I should be ready this way. If they get me that way, I should be ready this way. There could be so many different ways you can be ready that if 3 or 4 different ways ahead of the game. Because I've been through it. It's like I haven't been through this to even explain it.
Right.
I would always be ready, just in case. Even if I literally thought there's no way they would do this to me. It's impossible. They would never do this to me, right? But at the same time, I still was ready. And then it happened.
Right.
And I still was ready. And they tucked their tail between their legs and they ran off.
When you say you was ready, did you know that you could sense something was coming?
You can sense jealousy.
Okay.
Right? I mean, we're going to go into this. Like, a wolf can sense, smell jealousy.
Right.
You can see that, right? So you can see that, but you still, certain people, I had a lot of loyalty for what I did with people growing up. And I look at loyalty differently now. But I did have a lot of loyalty. So I would have died for certain people. Literally just jumped in a bullet for them and died for them. But I don't look at it like that no more. Because I have my kids now. Those are the only people I'll die for. How I look at it now is you just got to be prepared always for everything that comes at you. Even if you don't think it is, prepare for it. There's always a what if. So prepare and be ready. Always ready for battle. It's kind of it's an exhausting thing sometimes, but you're a man.
That's right.
So you still got to be ready, because a man should always be ready.
Right.
And when you look at animals, we'll talk about wolves,
right,
lions, anything like that. They're always ready for battle.
Always.
They're not just sitting there like we're if anything, humans are the laziest because we got all this around us, right? But they're always in the jungle or the forest or something where there's dangers coming for them, and they're always ready. But we get so content with what we do, and we get lazy.
Right.
And I feel like we shouldn't be lazy. A real howler should never be lazy in every aspect of their life. They should always be strong in everything they do. Where if somebody thinks that they're going to screw them over in business or screw them over where I'm going to fight this dude, and anything they do, they should be in fear of it. Like, dang, if I come at this dude, it's going to be a war in so many different ways. If they think they're going to come at you and destroy you, you're not doing your job. You're not a real howler. Because they should be literally thinking, I am so freaked out. I know, even if they're tough dudes, say they're an ultimate howler too, they should still be like, damn, if I go at this dude, it's going to be a fight.
Right.
Like a real fight. This is not going to feel good. This is going to hurt.
Right.
And I'm going to have to take some on the chin for sure. Where they're like, you know what, I'm not going to even do this. Let's just work together right. Let's do everything right. I feel like that's how it should be.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Definitely. And as you begin to speak about fighting and battling, you know, the first thing to come to my mind is you got to be ready for war. You know, this fight that we live, every time we wake up in the morning, it's a fight. It's another day. You know, it's a battle. It's another day. You know, so you have to look at all the obstacles and all the challenges that you have in life as, you know, this is going to be a big fight, even in relationships. You know what I mean? If you haven't settled a issue with a coworker, or, what type of battle or what type of fight that's going to be at work. It doesn't always have to be physical. It could be mental. Some things are not always a physical battle, but most of these things are mental battles. Can you handle the fight when you wake up in the morning of what I have to do to complete this day, or what do I have to do to handle this battle, or this challenge that I have at work. This my boss doesn't like me, or my coworker doesn't like me, or I don't have a lot of friends at work. These are battles and mental fights that you have to go through, or you have to overcome.
Well, the mental battles are the hardest. I feel like I'd rather get hit on the chin than deal with some of these mental battles. So I feel like you're 100% right about that. Because when it comes to mental battles, before I had my business, mental battles were nothing to me. I didn't look at them seriously. I didn't care what people thought, things like that. You have no choice but to handle things.
Every day.
You can't run from it. You can't ignore it.
Right.
You'd be like, man, I ain't dealing with this dude. You have no choice. Right. You have to deal with them. You have to deal with the situation. You can't run from it.
Right. And
that's the difference between being in a mental battle. Because
that's the difference between howlers and bass, because howlers won't step up. Bass won't step up and to the challenge. You see, they would be quiet and stand behind closed doors, and they won't step up and say, this is wrong or this is right. They will always, fall back. They don't have a voice. A bass doesn't have a voice. They don't want a voice. They don't want to speak. They're comfortable where they're at. And a howler will step up and say, this is not right. We should do it like this. Or, this is the better way to do it. Or they will step up to the challenge, or step up to the fight, or step up to the battle, with confidence. A howler, to me, is an influencer. That's what a howler is to me in this day and time. It's about this, how society tries to teach one howler and how another howler is inside of you. So which one are you going to follow? Or it's like the good guy on one shoulder and the bad guy on the other shoulder.
So you're saying that a howler can teach the wrong way to somebody that's trying to be another howler, or already a howler?
Howlers, they have a lot of power to lead, teach, and groom. So if a howler is teaching positive, which that would be a great thing, So my question to a lot of people, a lot of howlers, or who thinks they're howlers, is, who are you teaching? What are you teaching? You got to remember, your peers are watching while you're teaching. So if your peers are watching while you're teaching, are you teaching something positive, or you're teaching something negative?
So howlers can also teach negative.
Yeah, howlers can teach negative. They can be on top of, King Kong, I'm on top of the world, and they can also teach.
So you're saying howlers have a lot of influence regardless, whether it could be wrong or right.
Yes.
But howlers have a lot of influence.
Howlers have a lot of influence, and you have to realize, that when you're a howler, the power that you have, and what are you teaching? Basically, who are you teaching and what are you teaching?
So tell me some of your experiences, Ronnie, that you have with howlers, being taught, somebody teaching you something.
Okay, when I was growing up, I had a lot of influence, a lot of men influence in my life, because a lot of people said I had an old soul. What that means is I can relate to a lot of the older people. Like when I was in high school, I definitely had, 3 main influences in my life. I had 2 positive influencers in my life, and one who I thought was a great influence in my life. But, as I was growing, I noticed that, it was a lot of negative influence that he was giving me.
What kind of negative influences?
Well, in high school, I was great at sports. I was one of the number 1 running backs in San Bernardino County. I got Player of the Year of this county when I was a senior in high school. you know, and a lot of adults, they kind of cling to me because they see my talent, you know, and a few adults that I used to leave, you know, leave from practice or leave school to go hang out with, you know, it wasn't children, it wasn't, you know, young adults, these were grown men, you know, and, you know, we would get, you know, we would smoke marijuana and get high together, you know, so instead of looking at me as, you know, a golden ticket and let me help, you know, be more positive in his life, and a lot of it fell on me too because, you know, I thought it was cool, you know, but as an adult, you know, and you see somebody with a great opportunity to make it into a, you know, a college or make it into the NFL or make it into the professional league, you know, a positive influencer would have said, hey man, you don't need to be smoking this. You know, you don't need to be hanging out with us grown adults, grown-ass adults. And they made an impact. Even though it was negative, I thought I really was cool because I was hanging around adults and I was in high school. I wasn't even 18 yet. And I thought it was positive because I thought they were leaving an impact in my life because they wanted to hang around me too. They wanted me around. They were calling me, texting me, hey, come over, have a beer, have a drink. And I'm only in high school. I'm only 17 years old.
But it wasn't positive.
No, that wasn't.
And they were howlers? Did you look at them as howlers?
At first I did. I was confused. I thought it was cool because these are adults and I wasn't even hanging around my peers no more, my, you know, people are my age. I was hanging around grown adults now that wanted to, you know, that wanted to see, hey, he might go to the NFL. I need to keep him around. Maybe he has the ticket. So I understood as I was growing out of this Baz mentality that ain't it. At the end of the day, I definitely learned a lot with discernment to see, you know, who's for me and who's against me when it comes to my peers. Because I have to recognize the negative and I have to recognize the positive. Who are you in my life? Who am I and who am I allowing in my life? So that was big for me to see the negative people in my life.
So who is the positive howlers in your life?
Well, the positive howlers in my life, they were always teaching me hard work. I had 2 positive mentors in my life that were always calling me, checking on me, texting me.
Who are these mentors?
My godfather, Alvin Jr., he rests in peace. And my Uncle Wayne. These are some giants. They were giants in my life. They encouraged me even to this day before my godfather had passed a couple years ago. But my Uncle Wayne, he's still in my life, and he's a giant when it comes to...
What do you mean, though, giant? Like, what did he teach you? What do you feel like he taught you, how he taught you to howl, how he taught you to fight? Like, what did they teach you?
The first thing I can remember my uncle teaching me, I was 16 years old, that was a great impact in my life. He taught me how to learn how to take criticism. And he said, Ronnie, if you can't take criticism, you won't make it in this life. Because everybody won't be on your side. Everybody won't choose you. Everybody won't think you're the best. Everybody won't like you. Everybody won't accept you.
It's hard to even understand that as a 16-year-old.
But I kept at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and even the age that I am right now, that never left me. Mm-hmm. Because I don't care what people think about me. I don't care what people say about me. What I know about myself is that I'm trying to be a howler. I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to be the best version of myself. I'm trying to complete every goal and every task every single day. Daily. And he taught me, one thing my uncle taught me was never give up. And I live by that. Like how you was explaining about fighting and battling. Every day I'm trying to figure it out. Every day I'm trying not just to figure out that day, I'm trying to figure out the future too.
So our kids don't have to figure it like we do.
So our kids will never have to try to, they're going to have to.
A different way.
A different level.
Yes. Which will be great for us because as long as it's still giving them some type of challenge, it's still great. It's just they shouldn't have to go what we've gone through.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like we came from a different era,
Right.
a different like status,
Right.
how we grew up. So yeah. And what about your other influencer, the other influence, Howler?
My godfather, he was very spiritual. Just like my Uncle Wayne, he became spiritual.
So one taught you to fight, one taught you to fight spiritually.
Yes, definitely. And the spiritual battle is what I really fight regularly. You know, our spiritual battle is in our heads. Our spiritual battle is the mind. The moment you wake up is a spiritual battle because you're dealing with spiritual beings. And when you go to work, you're dealing with spiritual beings. When you go to the club, you're dealing with spiritual beings. You know, when you go into the movies, wherever you go, you're dealing with spiritual beings, and you have to be able to conduct yourself accordingly to deal with other people. And at the end of the day, he taught me, you know, to be humble.
Well, the thing is, too, is when it comes to people like us, Ronnie, I mean, we grew up differently, so it's kind of hard to be a spiritual, like to conduct yourself in a certain way when we used to just fight our way out of everything physically.
Definitely.
Right? So now that we're older and we have no choice but to be politically correct in things we do, you got to fight in that way. So the way we handle things was just different.
Right.
Right? So, I mean, how does that affect you now?
Well, let's start from the beginning. I have, I have brothers, and I was the youngest boy out of the two older brothers, and we were always, physical, fighting each other, and so and of course I always felt like I was, the getting the short end of the stick, as they would say. I always felt like I was being challenged, and because I was the youngest, I was the middle child, so that built up an anger in my life. That built up a animosity. They kind of pushed me to be a fighter or to defend myself. So
I would have never thought you were a middle child though, because you literally walk like the oldest. The way you deal with yourself and how you handle things. I would think you're the oldest child.
I definitely get that a lot. And they definitely look at me sometime as if I am the older brother, because they come to me for maturity, my wisdom, and my knowledge and understanding that God has gifted me with. So definitely have an older soul. And since I was a younger child, back to me being the middle child, they used to try to dominate me and to see how tough I was. So they were creating a beast from the beginning. Them two were
feeding the wolf.
They was feeding me. So, I felt like I had to be this type of person in society because of what the older ones were teaching. So as I began to grow older, my mom and dad's teaching and my mentor's teaching came in to try to teach me the spiritual way, or to handle it emotionally, the mental way. So I was able to, as I got older, to change my mentality on how I thought, not just using my hands and my anger. Now I use my wisdom, I use my heart, I use my mind, I use my ears, I use my eyes, I use all the.
How difficult was that to change, though? Like, go back to that moment. Like, obviously we can talk about it now differently. Mm-hmm. But I know how difficult that was. But I feel like you know how difficult that transition was. And I feel like being a man, being a howler, you have to make changes in your life. So how difficult was it for you to transition to just handling things with your fists to making a whole different change of how you handle things?
Well, I'm going to tell y'all a story. I almost lost my hand one time. I got a scar right here if you can't see it. And I got into it with someone at a park. and I'm an adult. I'm about 27, 28 years old. And him and his friends were all in a circle, and we were playing basketball. So as we playing basketball, the guy is bumping me real hard in my back, and I only had one friend with me at the park. So I guess he thought I was a little kid or something, so he kept doing it. And he had his all MMA, UFC friends there with him. So at this time, I'm like, I'm going to give him a pass. I'm transitioning into my mindset of change. My mentality is changing, and forgive and turn the other cheek and be humble while I'm doing it. So I'm working on this with all my heart, with all my strength. I've been trying for about the past 2-3 years, and I was challenged. And this was the first challenge because I was doing good for about 2 to 3 years.
And most people don't challenge people like us.
No.
So it's rare.
Right.
So when it happens, it kind of like throws you off too because you already know what to do.
Right. And they're fooled by the smile.
Yeah.
So they say, oh, look at the smile. You know, he's nice, so I'm going to punk him So he kept hitting me in my back and with his elbow. I didn't even have the ball in my hand, so he was checking me. And we was going down the court, and he was checking me. So I said, hey, I'm a grown man. You know, you're going to have to, chill out, relax. I'm a grown man. You're a grown man. So, and in my head, I'm praying. Like, I don't want this to happen because I'm going to hurt somebody out here.
You ain't praying because you're scared.
No, definitely not praying.
Don't pray 'cause you're scared.
I'm not praying because I'm scared. I'm praying because of what I'm about to do to this guy.
And you want,
if
and
he
you
continues
don't want
to
to have
do
to
it,
do it because we did it enough times.
Right.
Right. I know you.
Right.
And I know you did it enough times. So just everybody needs to be aware.
Right.
Our prayers are different. Howler prayers are different because we're praying to do the right thing.
Right.
And that's what we want to do because we're not afraid of anything. If anything, I mean, we just don't want to do what we know what we can do.
Right. And that's how it was. Exactly how you explained it. I was definitely giving him pass after pass. I gave him 3 passes. And I told him, I said, listen, you put your hands on me again, I'm going to put my hands on you. And after I had told God, like, I won't punch anybody else if you, help me with my anger and my aggressiveness. And I failed the test. But I knew it was a test after. I didn't know it was. I knew it was a test as I was being challenged. I knew it was a test. So I stopped and I said, I'm gonna give him one more chance. And that's when he hit me in the back of my neck with his elbow. He dropped the basketball. I dropped the basketball, and it was lights out for him. He had no chance. But I failed the test because I've been trying to work on at that moment and at that time, and I almost lost my hand. After I had to ask God, hey, take this anger and this aggression from me. So I almost lost my hand right here, and the doctor said that it was only a fingernail.
But some people need to be humble, Ronnie. I bet you he didn't do that stuff again.
I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure he didn't.
And we humbled a lot of people in our lives.
Definitely.
But at the end of the day, I feel like sometimes people need to be humbled, and maybe I mean I know sometimes it's war, but you gave him chance after chance, elbowing you. I mean I know that sometimes we got to turn the other cheek, but I feel sometimes that we save somebody else from getting the same treatment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. I'm sure he won't do that to no one else, and I mean of course a lot of his friends came rushing me. My hand was leaking, bleeding all over the place. And I had to take my shirt off and wrap my hand and go straight to the hospital. But that lesson was learned because I did not leave that scene without waking him up and hugging him and asking him to forgive me.
What did he say?
He said, yeah, whatever.
Whatever again.
Yeah, he said, yeah, whatever.
And
his friends, the cold part about it is his friends said I should have stalled him out. You should have stalled him out, but they seen. I said, well, you guys seen how he was approaching me. Y'all seen how he was attacking me. So you telling me I gave him chance after chance after chance, and he still wouldn't accept my apology, nor would he accept, what had happened.
See, well, he needed it then. You know what I'm saying? He was blessed with that. with getting hurt because he needed that because he's in.
It could have been worse.
No, the thing is, he could be worse than somebody else.
Yes.
You know, I don't feel like maybe it was a good thing for you to do that, but it was a good thing for him to get it done.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
So definitely, definitely. So I mean, I believe that, you know, the positive teachings from my, you know, peers were teaching me to give that person a chance. And a chance, and a chance, and a chance. You can't let people just walk all over
But when
you.
they start putting their hands on you,
Yes, definitely.
You got to handle
Definitely.
business. They got to learn. They got to feel the power sometimes.
Definitely.
You know.
But I that was a part of my growth. That was the first part of my growth and the first test of my growth from when I was a kid and I was aggressive and angry just because that's who I wanted to be. That's who I was creating. I was creating this monster. I was creating this. Yeah, my brothers and my brothers and cousins, they introduced me because I was younger to the monster.
But I think a real howler like you were doing, they're gonna start off as a monster, right? Like they're gonna start off trying to bark and howl and bite.
I think it was in my blood too,
right?
Because I didn't back down from nothing.
Yeah,
and nobody.
But a real howler tries to learn to control the monster in them.
Definitely, that's good.
Right? They should always try to control the monster in them because they already know it's there.
Yeah.
So unless somebody's putting their hands on you, where like you need to defend yourself, you need to fight now. I feel like you can't be humble and just be like, all right, you know what, you're tough, dude. Yeah.
And that came later on in life.
Yeah. But once they put their hands on you, they got to get dropped.
Right.
I feel like, I mean, you can walk away if you want to, but I feel like sometimes it's for the best, even for them.
Right.
Because they are going to do this to somebody else.
Right.
And they might not now because they got dropped so hard. It hurt.
Right.
And they needed to be humble.
And I agree. There's a no hands policy. I teach my kids this. You don't let nobody get in your face. You don't let nobody come close to you to touch you or even act like they're going to do something to you. But I wasn't in fear at all. So, I mean, I let him get his little elbows in the back, and I didn't even, you know, and I just kept telling him, like, look, chill, relax. It wasn't hurting me, but I could tell he was doing it intentionally.
Yeah.
So
he was trying to get at you.
He was trying to get at me.
You trying to see. You got to show him the how.
Yeah, and I ain't let him up underneath here.
Nah,
you know?
they don't see.
They didn't see.
You always wear clothes that are normal.
Yeah.
He takes that sweater off. He has big ass guns.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, people gonna think like, you know, who is this little kid? Because you know they don't see. I'm a grown ass man.
And that, give it to him.
Yeah, and that's how that happened. So, to make a long story short, that was my transition from, you know, growing up angry and animosity with no control, to where I've started to learn as I got older to humble myself, turn the other cheek, and try to do my best to defuse situations like that. And I think that's the best way. As a man, as a howler, you don't always have to stick your chest out to show that you tough. People should already know who you are just by your presence.
Especially an adult howler. You shouldn't have to stick your chest out. Like you only need to do that if you're ready to battle, to fight. I feel like that's completely true. Because that's we don't do that.
No, I don't stick my chest out. If we go hang out, we go have lunch, we go have dinner.
That's
somewhere.
A baby howler.
Right.
They want to prove something. You know what I mean?
Like people in the gym.
Yeah. They want to prove something.
Yeah, you got people in the gym like that. I can't wait for that podcast to come out about, you know, testosterone chest people in the gym.
Yeah.
They got their chest sticking all out like we care.
Yeah, we don't care.
I don't care how big your chest is.
Everybody gets dropped at the end of the day.
I don't care about any of that. I'm a grown man, you a grown man, you a howler, I'm a howler. Just don't put your hands on me. That's all that's called respect.
Yeah.
You know, so howlers don't have to stick their chest out to say, look at me, look how big I am, look how strong I am. That don't mean you have the mental capabilities to fight, and that don't mean you have the spiritual capabilities to fight, and that also don't mean you have the hands to fight. So because you have the look doesn't mean that you're a true howler.
Yeah.
You can look the part, You could be a negative howler.
And that's the thing too. There's still negative howlers, even if there are a howler. They're going to teach negatively,
right?
And that's just as bad to me as a bass. It's actually worse,
right?
You know what I mean?
Also, howlers. Let's talk about positive howlers. I want to get back to the positive howlers and what they're teaching. Positive howlers teach hard work. That's what positive is. I'm supposed to be at practice, or I'm supposed to be at home resting, and other people are trying to teach me, get me into drugs and alcohol and falling for all the other temptations that will lead you away from your goals and lead you away from the positive things that you have for your future. So my positive howlers in my life, they were always telling me to push forward. They were always telling me work harder. They were always telling me the things I needed to be doing that were positive for what I was trying to become, and do in this life. That's what the positive howlers were helping me understand. They were trying to help me understand that there were no handouts in this life. They were trying to tell me that you always got to stay on the grind in this life. That's what my positive howlers were trying to teach me, because as I got older, if I didn't make it to sports or to the NFL, which I didn't, I still needed to hear there's no easy way out. I still needed to hear never give up. I still needed to hear in the back of my head, you have to grind harder. There's no handouts. There's no easy way out. So I need that now in my life, because society is not easy for nobody.
Especially now, because of the way everything is. So where do you find your inspiration from now?
Myself, I like you. You're very, this is no cap. You're a great inspiration, because anything that you, and this is y'all might have to cut this. No cap. Anything that you touch, you go hard on. Anything that you put your mind to, anything that you have a goal to accomplish or a business that you have to accomplish, you're all in. Whether it's Fix It Diesel, your business, whether it's this podcast, whether it's your children, whether it's us, your friends, whatever you put your mind to that you say you love, you're all in. And I've seen you go all in mostly everything that you love. If you didn't love it, you were slack on it. You were slack and you wouldn't pay it much attention. But I've seen you, and I'm inspired. And this ain't the first time I've told you. I'm saying this on this podcast. But at the end of the day, you go harder than most people that I've seen in something that you love. Not just the people that you love, but your future. Fix It Diesel is your future. This podcast is looking like it's the future. So you have been going 150% in these things. You've been going 150% since Fix It Diesel, when it almost failed. I was here. I watched that. I watched it. I watched the bank account go down to zero with my own eyes. And I watched it go from $60,000 accounts a week to nothing with my own eyes. And I'm looking back now is, hey, a lot of people that didn't make it past that 4 to 5 years, you made it to 8, 9, almost 10 years plus. So if I can, and I don't have that too much in my life, I don't have too many positive influences around me now. So that's why I say you're one of the biggest influences that I've watched, and I've seen how much you put your heart into things. So I influence myself when I
appreciate that.
That's 100.
But I don't even feel like that guy. Mm-hmm. I feel like I ain't going hard enough. I feel like I'm not pushing hard enough. I'm not moving fast.
But that's
enough.
what true howlers think. Because I have a lot of things going on in my life that I want to accomplish and goals. I have different properties in Kentucky, properties in Tennessee, properties in Nevada, property in Apple Valley. So you're trying to tell, and 3 out of the 5 are vacant. So I have to in my mind, try to figure out, how do I get it done? What's next? How much money do I have to invest in doing these things? Do I have the money? Do I have the capital to do these things? But as I look at the influence that I have around me, which is, you and one other person that I can call an influencer in a part of my life. When I look at this thing, when I look at it, I say, well, wow, I'm not alone. Jacob has all these things that he's trying to do, not just the Fix It Diesel, not just the podcast, not just his family and friends. He has a whole comic story, comic book, cartoon characters that is huge, that you started on, that you're working at, that is still in the talking when we're still in the making, still on the table while we're talking. So I'm like, I feel like I'm not alone. I might have all these things that I need to do, and then some of them are at a stagnant. Some of them are not moving, but my mind is still moving. My mental is still moving. I'm putting the pieces and the puzzles together. I'm still playing chess. I'm not playing checkers. I'm not just jumping here and there and jumping there, here and there, but I've learned.
And I feel like as long as you put at least a brick on it each day, there's movement. I don't care. I learned a lot of patience with business and things that I'm doing, but I know I'm stacking a brick on what I'm building daily. I feel like as long as you're stacking a brick by brick, you're building. It doesn't. I mean, with us, it might take a while, right? But all of a sudden, something just might hit. I mean, I shouldn't have this business. I feel like I should have lost it a long time ago, but I refuse to lose it. And I feel like you're the same.
Howlers don't lose.
We don't lose. We learn.
We learn.
And that's the thing, and it's the same thing with you. Is we struggle, dude. Like we were born from the gutter, so we're gonna struggle.
Right.
But we don't want our kids for that.
Definitely.
We want our kids to be able to live differently than us.
Right.
So we push harder.
Right.
And what we're doing, even with this podcast, we're pushing harder.
Right.
I see more than just a podcast. I see a vision. Everything that we do, there has to be vision behind it.
Right.
There has to be passion behind it, or it ain't nothing anyways.
Right.
Because if we're just talking about nothing, what does it matter?
Right. And there's and I'm not against handouts, because I mentioned handouts earlier. I'm not against handouts, but if that's all you're looking for is a handout, he said we come from the gutter. That means we didn't have no handouts. Nobody was paying our way. Nobody was, saying, here's some money to fund your business. Here's some money to it's not happening for us.
That would have been insane if it did.
Right.
Hold to the level we'd be at.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So we grinding it out ourselves. We come from the bottom. Every howler don't have to come from the bottom. It's good if you're howling at the top already and you didn't have to, you had a handout. That's cool. That's, that's how you made it.
But I feel like it's harder to howl from the top. It doesn't mean you can't. I feel like if whatever you see that you have, and I can make it better. I can, in some way, I can do this, I can do that. Like something like just to grind.
So
still.
even if you're at the top, you still got to grind. You still got to grind.
And you see people that were at the top that are grinding still. Like you see them.
Right.
But it's very few.
Because if you're a true howler, you're gonna want more than just to be where you're at.
Yeah.
You're not just gonna howl like I had this handout or I had this property inherited to me. I'm cool. I'm gonna just live off that. If somebody handed you something, our true howler is gonna double it, triple it, quadruple it. So when we talk about grinding, grinding is we didn't have a handout, so we started from the bottom. That means grinding means I didn't have someone to pave the way for me. I didn't have no one to help me with my success. And with success is the only option for the people who came from the bottom. Success is the only option.
It's only the only option for people that are howlers, though.
Right.
Because a lot of these people just stay at the bottom, and they're content with it. They live with it. We see a lot of those kind of people. Actually, I have a lot of friends still like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that we know there's only one way to go.
Right.
Because your kids, okay, let me ask you a question. Do your kids see that gutter? They know you're from it, but they've never seen it.
No.
Ever.
No.
If anything, we look at
these
them
kids. These kids in this day society, they barely know what ghetto means.
Nah, they don't know what ghetto means.
They don't.
You bring them to a friend's house. Oh, it's ghetto, Dad. That's all they know what ghetto is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They don't know what ratchetness is. They don't know what ghetto is. They don't know coming from the gutter. They don't even know what that means, coming from the trenches. You know, they don't even know what that means. And I don't even want them to understand that lingo. I don't even want them to have to experience what I had to go through to get to where they only look at me as chi-ching. That's what my kids look at me.
We look at our dads like chi-ching?
I know. I didn't look at my dad as chi-ching. You'd be lucky to get $1. Rest in peace, Pops, but that's real. My dad was very old school, and you had to work for yours.
But do you think that we would have been who we were, like trying to climb to the top, if we were handed everything? Probably not.
No.
I don't think we would have.
No.
I don't think we'd be doing this podcast. I wouldn't think I would have this business.
They only see the wealth. They only see the good part of life. Yeah. They don't see the struggle. You know, they didn't see me struggle.
And you keep a smile on your face.
At all times.
And that's the thing that they don't know, is that the smile is there because, I mean, at the end of the day, we are happy. We can keep ourselves happy.
Right.
And at the end of the day, too, like, doesn't it work differently when people like us to get together?
Right.
Like with our friends that are doing the same thing, we're all howling in different ways. Right. We get together and we get to be ourselves.
Right.
Because nobody sees us that way. Only we really do.
Right.
So we don't even have to talk, the stuff we're talking about right now, we don't talk about like this in person.
No.
It's different things. It's just that,
right.
And it was weird for us at first. It didn't even feel like natural. And we're getting used to the podcast, so we know what we got to do.
Right.
And people need to hear this kind of stuff.
With Howlers, I feel like success is the only option. There's no other option for Howlers when it comes to success. We're just built different. You know, we built to win. And winning is in our mindset. That's the only thing that we think about is winning. When we wake up in the morning, winning. We go to sleep at night, winning. It's not being cocky, and it's not being prideful.
There's no other option.
There's no other option.
And I don't think a lot of people are going to understand that. When we say that, though. When you say winning is the only option, there's no other option. Because if the only other option that we don't want to think about is when it comes to fail for us, we lose everything.
Right.
Failing is not like, oh man, that sucks. I'm just gonna start again. No, we lose it all. It's gone, and then we have nothing no more.
Right.
So when it comes to failing, is not an option for us. It's not. Winning is the only thing we can do. Even if we win a little bit, if it's like right there, then we got to keep rolling. But winning is the only option. That's
even if I learned,
hard.
I won.
Yeah.
If it comes down to people say, well, you failed, but no, I didn't fail. I learned, and I still won because I'm a winner, and that's the only thing that matters when it comes to my mindset. I can't lose. I won't lose. We got a howler feels like they're unstoppable. Yes, they might go through some challenges, but a howler would definitely feel that, hey, this is a challenge that I will overcome.
Where howler's always going to have scars. They ain't been through no battle if they haven't had no scars.
Right.
So yeah, they're always going to go through stuff. So that's the reality of the situation. If you're going to be a howler, if you feel like that's what it is, then you're going to have to take those scars with you. So I 100% believe that.
Definitely. And it's always moving forward, like you said, never being content.
Never.
So a howler is not just going to say, oh, I lost in this situation, I'm done. A howler is going to say, I'm not okay with losing. I'm not okay with this. I'm uncomfortable. I'm not okay with being uncomfortable. If I'm uncomfortable, this ain't right. A howler is going to say, hey, I'm not winning. I got to win somehow.
And you should actually always kind of keep yourself uncomfortable. Because at the end of the day, you're bazzing if you are comfortable. You should always be pushing forward in whatever you do. And it actually betters yourself. You get stronger in so many different ways. When we first started this, Do we feel strong in it?
No, definitely not.
So we're betting ourselves even in this, even talking to each other.
Right, because we're not used to talking to each other like this.
No, dude, we'd be clowning each other like
right.
this, having these kind of conversations.
But it's important that they hear.
It's important for everything, even for us. We're building ourselves doing the podcast.
Definitely.
I mean, do you feel like you're growing from doing this?
Definitely, 100%.
Because I do too, and it's kind of it's crazy. Who would have known we would have learned something from doing this podcast? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't even seem like that was on the table.
Right.
It seemed like we were doing something for something else.
House of a Baz. I'm Ronnie Adams.
And I'm Jacob Casas, and this is Shed the Sheep.
We out.